There's a quiet epidemic happening in American retirements that almost nobody talks about. It isn't running out of money, it's the opposite. Data from the Employee Benefit Research Institute shows the typical retiree who walked in with $500,000 or more had only spent down about 11.8% of their savings 20 years later. A third of them ended up richer than the day they retired, not because their portfolios went on a tear, because they couldn't bring themselves to touch the money. The cruise gets skipped. The thermostat stays a degree lower than it should. The grandkids get a birthday card instead of a visit. The bank balance keeps growing while the actual life keeps shrinking. So today we're going to figure out why a brain does this, what it's quietly costing, and the math reframe that finally gives retirees permission to spend what they earned. If you've worked your whole life, built a meaningful nest egg, and still can't bring yourself to enjoy it, you're not broken. You're running into 3 psychological forces that quietly lock down a wallet from the inside. The first one is loss aversion. The psychologist Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize partly for showing that humans feel financial losses about twice as intensely as equivalent gains. Watching a portfolio lose $2,000 hurts roughly twice as much as watching it gain $2,000 feels good. Now picture what happens when a retiree logs into their 401k account and pulls out a few thousand for a vacation. The brain doesn't process that withdrawal as paying yourself for 40 years of work. It processes it as a loss. The number goes down. The internal alarm fires. So most retirees quietly settle into spending only the interest, only the social security check, only the dividends. The principal stays untouched, like a museum exhibit instead of money meant for a life. The second force is the identity shift. For 30 or 40 years, you were rewarded every single month for saving. The employer match landed. The balance climbed. Your financial advisor told you to put in more. Saving felt responsible. Saving felt safe. Saving became part of who you were. Then one day someone says, "You've made it. Now spend it." Spending used to be the thing you resisted. Suddenly it's the thing you're supposed to celebrate. The instructions flipped, but the wiring didn't. A lot of retirees describe this as feeling vaguely guilty every time they swipe a card on something fun, because for their entire working life, spending was the behaviour they were trained to push back against. The third force is ambiguity aversion. You don't know how long you're going to live. You don't know what long-term care might cost. You don't know what inflation does over a 30-year retirement. When the brain faces that much uncertainty, it doesn't calculate the average outcome. It overweights the worst one. So a retiree with $1 million in investable assets ends up spending like they only have $250,000. The brain plans for the worst version of every unanswerable question, even when the real math says they have plenty. I mean, think about that for a second. 3 completely separate parts of your brain, all firing in the same direction, all telling you to hoard the money you spent a lifetime earning the right to enjoy. These 3 forces don't just create discomfort, they quietly rebuild retirement into a smaller version of itself. Once you start looking at the numbers, the pattern is impossible to miss. JP Morgan Asset Management's recent retirement research tracked the actual spending of over 5 million households using Chase banking and credit card data. The finding was striking. Actual retiree spending falls by more than 30% between ages 60 and 85 for households with $250,000 to $750,000 in investable assets. Average spending at ages 80 to 84 lands roughly 27% below spending at ages 60 to 64. Financial planners have a name for this pattern. They call it the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years. Your 60s and early 70s are the go-go years. Travel, projects around the house, dinners with friends, big trips with the grandkids. By your late 70s, you naturally enter the slow-go phase. The body slows down. The big trips taper. By the 80s, most spending shifts toward healthcare and home, and the discretionary side of the budget shrinks on its own. The irony is brutal. Retirees are at their most cautious during the very years when spending would do them the most good. The go-go years are when you can still hike a Patagonia trail, still walk every cobblestone street in Rome at sunset, still keep up with a 7-year-old grandchild. By the time the slow-go years arrive, the body has already started writing checks the bank account doesn't need to cash. The 24/7 Wall Street team described this with a scenario that's almost too common to be funny. Picture a couple somewhere in America in their late 60s, $2.4 million in savings, no debt, 2 social security checks coming in every month, a weekly grocery budget they haven't adjusted since 2019. By every measure, they could book a first-class flight to anywhere on Earth tomorrow morning. They won't. They're living like the bank account is $400,000 instead of $2.4 million. By every financial metric, the retirement is working. The life inside it isn't. And that's where the data turns even stranger. A 2024 study by Blanchett and Finke at the Alliance for Lifetime Income found that the same retirees with the same total wealth, behave like two completely different people depending on where the money is coming from. The label changes everything. And there's a fix that almost nobody talks about. If Minecraft is helping you think about money differently, hit like and subscribe. We break down the psychology and the math behind financial decisions like this every week. Step back for a second, because the cost of cautious spending isn't just a bigger inheritance for the kids. The cost shows up everywhere else first. It shows up in the trip not taken when your knee still worked. The flight to Lisbon at 65 is a fundamentally different trip than the same flight at 78. The lungs work differently. The legs work differently. The window for certain experiences quietly closes, and nobody sends you a notification when it does. It shows up in the kitchen you put off remodeling 6 years until a pipe burst. Now the repair cost twice what the original upgrade would have, and you've spent half a decade hating a room you live in every day. It shows up in the relationships. The grandchild you didn't fly out to see during the year they actually still wanted to hang out with grandparents. The friend group you skipped on the cruise because $80 a day felt extravagant. The dinner with your spouse you talked yourself out of because the bill felt like waste. And it shows up emotionally. The 2024 Protected Retirement Income and Planning Study from the Alliance for Lifetime Income surveyed more than 2,500 American consumers aged 45 to 75. 46% of them, almost half, said the act of spending down their own savings causes them genuine anxiety. So roughly half of the people walking into the most financially abundant phase of their lives are walking in feeling worse, not better. That's the real cost of cautious spending, not a smaller pile, a smaller life lived around it. Which brings us to the question that actually fixes this. If 3 psychological forces are pushing toward hoarding, what's the one shift that pulls back hard enough to overcome all 3? Blanchett and Finker's research found something close to a behavioral cheat code. Across thousands of households, retirees spend about 80 cents of every dollar that arrives as guaranteed income, but only about half of what they could safely withdraw from their savings. Same person, same year, different behavior. Picture 2 retirees with identical $500,000 portfolios. One keeps the money in their IRA, the other converts it into a monthly payment that arrives like a paycheck. The retiree getting monthly payments will spend close to 100% of what comes in every year. The retiree with the IRA spends only about half of what they could safely withdraw. Same total wealth, different label, roughly double the life actually lived. The math hasn't changed. The brain has finally been given permission. When a paycheck from Social Security or a pension or an annuity lands in a checking account, the brain codes it as income. Income is meant to be spent. That's literally what income is for. When the same dollar comes out of an IRA, the brain codes it as raiding savings. Savings are meant to be protected. The number is identical. The behavior is completely different. So how do you actually use this? 3 concrete reframes that handle all 3 forces at once. Reframe number 1. Convert the lump sum into income. Even if it's only in your head, your brain doesn't see a 6-figure portfolio the same way it sees a monthly deposit. The portfolio feels fragile and almost untouchable. The monthly deposit feels like a paycheck, and paychecks are made to be spent. Same balance, different mental category entirely. Some retirees do this with a managed payout fund. Some buy an immediate annuity to cover essentials. Some set up an automatic monthly transfer from their brokerage to their checking account so the money lands like a paycheck. The dollars are identical. The brain receives them completely differently. Reframe number 2. Use mental buckets. Research on mental accounting shows that retirees who carve out a $15,000 to $25,000 annual fund budget spend it far more freely than retirees pulling from one big, undifferentiated pool. When the money is labelled, spending from the right label doesn't feel reckless. It feels like exactly what you planned. Some households use literal buckets: essentials, lifestyle, legacy, safety net. When every dollar has a purpose, withdrawing the lifestyle money for an actual lifestyle stops feeling like vandalism. Reframe number 3. Run the math on inaction. Most people are good at calculating what things cost. Almost no one calculates what not doing things costs. Pick 3 things you've been quietly delaying because of price. Now ask what each delay actually cost you over 5 years. The kitchen you skipped in 2020 didn't stay free. It accrued interest in every meal cooked in a space that frustrated you. The Italy trip you keep punting won't be the same trip at 75 as at 65. The grandkid's childhood doesn't come back. Inaction has a price tag too. Retirees who underspend aren't broke. Their brain hasn't been given permission yet. Loss aversion, identity shift, and the fear of the unknown were installed in your wiring to help you survive. They did their job for 40 years. The same instincts that built the nest egg are now standing between you and the life the nest egg was built for. So here's the question worth sitting with, and it applies whether you are already retired, close to it, or still building toward it. If you knew with reasonable certainty that your money would outlast you, how would you spend in retirement? Because the go-go years don't wait. The bank account will almost certainly outlive you. The body might not.